All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, and congrats on making it through 2020. Happy January. We're excited to have you guys here with us. I'm Courtney Letema. I manage our inside sales team here at Winslow. We're also joined by Peter Ritter from Automox. I'm going to open up with an agenda, run you guys through what we're going to be doing today, and then I'll hand it over to Peter to jump into the technical aspect of it. So today, I'm going to kick us off with a quick overview of who Winslow is, for those of you who don't know. Then we'll hand it off to Peter, and he'll deep dive into how Automox does what it does. We'll round off with a quick review of the WTG Secure Score and a Q&A session. If you guys have any questions throughout the presentation, drop them in the chat box. We'll address them at the end, and then we'll follow up with anyone that we can't get to in terms of questions. And you will also be entered to get an extra entry for our Patagonia gift card we're going to be giving away today if you ask a question. So whoever wins that, we will reach out to within the next 24 hours via email and get your information and get that over to you guys. So who's Winslow? We are headquartered in Waltham, Mass. We also have offices in New York and North Carolina. Historically, we've been a data center focused company. In the past few years, we've poured a ton of resources into growing out our endpoint side of the business, which allows us to be a full solution provider, we like to say, from the desktop to the cloud. We have an amazing team of system engineers that help on the front end of projects, and then a full team of professional services that helps on the flip side with installation, development, training, staff augmentation, pretty much anything you could need. We also have a full range of cybersecurity consulting services, assessments, and solutions, Automox being one of those that we'll talk about today. And I'm slightly biased because I lead this team, but we also have a fantastic team of endpoint specialists that focus specifically on endpoint hardware, software, security, and services. Here's a quick glance at some of the awards that we've won over the years. I'm personally most proud of our CRN Triple Crown Award because I think it shows not only that we're growing quickly from a revenue and headcount perspective, but we're growing our IT knowledge every step of the way as well. This is helping us to keep up to date with the advances in technology. As we all know, it evolves day in and day out. It also allows us to provide our best solutions for our customers. In 2020, only 44 solution providers actually pulled off the feat of winning the Triple Crown Award, and we were one of those, so it's something I'm extremely excited about. We have a few other local things, as well as we are Dell's Partner of the Year, and a few other CRN awards. So last thing before I hand it over to Peter, I mentioned our cybersecurity offering a few slides ago, just to touch a little deeper on that. So Matt Kozlowski is our in-house CISSP, and he built out our cybersecurity portfolio around the NIST framework. They break cybersecurity into 5 primary pillars. So identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. We have a large portfolio around products and services that span all 5 of those. Automox really falls into those first 2 categories, so the identify and protect. So you're able to inventory all your hardware and software, manage and apply patches, enforce security configurations, deploy software, and a ton of other things, all through their single cloud native console. I'm going to let Peter jump into how that works, as well as the importance of that. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to him. So Peter, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Courtney, and thank you to Winslow Group for inviting Automox to this webinar. I look forward to speaking to everybody that has been able to join us today. And let's go ahead and start with how we kind of approach this, right? As Courtney was saying, kind of those first 2 pillars there. And one thing that we like to kind of talk about first is a modern endpoint management solution. And so what does that mean? And it really comes down to being cloud native or on the cloud, as opposed to your legacy device where you have to set up a server, get an application installed, maybe even have a SQL database to kind of do the security that you need in your environment. The cloud has been out there for over 10 years, and some companies have moved to it in the early stages. Some took a little bit more cautious approach, waiting for things to mature. But at this point, it's really the way to go. and very, very helpful and key now that we're all working from home thanks to COVID. So that's kind of what I mean by modern endpoint technology. And then to go a little bit deeper in that, what should that technology do for you? So to kind of go into these kind of 4 different categories here, the best way I think is to kind of give you 2 examples. So as Courtney mentioned, we could start off with patch management. So let's say that you did have a legacy device still running Windows Server 2016, and Microsoft releases a patch. Well, right there, you got to start asking questions, right? You got to have a technology that's going to say, hey, what is that patch? What are the prereqs for that patch? Do I need a certain service pack or build or other patches installed? And then we also want to find out if that patch is installed or not, right? So that's kind of moving into our monitoring state. And this state is not a one-time. This is kind of a continuous thing. When I was in IT security, I remember that I was on some legacy hardware, deployed some patches from Microsoft. My vendor released an update a couple weeks later, and things didn't work quite right. Well, found out that their latest update was created before the patch came out and not compatible with it. So I had to go back and uninstall that patch. My security department wasn't very happy with that, right? Because now there could be a concern there. So again, the monitor state is not just a one-time, but a continuous thing. Now that we kind of got to that stage, like, okay, we got to push out a patch, then we can go ahead and do that. We can make sure that a reboot happens and do that verify action to make sure things in place. So that's kind of one example with patch management. But we can also do anything outside of patch management too, because really a package is no different, a patch I should say, is no different from a package or a script. So, another great example here, especially that we're all working from home, is maybe around security settings for your employees. You got them working from home now with, let's say, a Windows 10 laptop. And you're thinking, okay, I want to have certain security settings in there. I want to make sure that they have those things in place. And we'll do like a basic one, like locking the computer. And you might thinking like, well, where's the concern there with locking the computer? I mean, if your employee's working from home, the only people that can have access is maybe, a spouse or the children. Well, I know firsthand that, while my kids, know about computer security because I've been in this business for over 2 decades, they can still make honest mistakes. I mean, my daughter last August, I gave her a MacBook Pro and I installed some security software, handed it over to her, and she's like, this is great, but hey, everything at school is run on Google Docs. And I'm like, well, just go into Safari and download Google. 5 minutes later, she's knocking at my office door saying it got blocked. Somehow, out of the 15 or 20 different hits that are for downloading Google Chrome, she clicked on the one that was actually a piece of malware. So, that's an example where the software settings and all that can even at home can help. So kind of going back to my example of if I'm working in my home office and I don't lock my computer, well, we have a shared printer that's in my office. And again, maybe something went wrong. She could sit down on my computer, try to go to some place to try to print out her schoolwork and not realize that she's making a mistake and using my work computer. So having a policy where I can say, hey, what is the lockdown policy? Is it 15 minutes after no use? And monitor, just like the patching, monitor that every day to make sure that the user didn't change that. And then either initially or if they did change it, go ahead and deploy a script to take that action. So that's kind of what we're talking about here, what Automox and other tools can do using a cloud native solution to kind of monitor and deploy packages or patches to give you better endpoint security. All right, so let's kind of move on here. And my apologies, Courtney, it doesn't seem that I have access to move the slides forward. Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper into kind of the 2 different departments that are taking care of your endpoint security. You got the security team that's going to go out there and they're going to have antivirus and backups and maybe a better tool like EDR, endpoint detection response. So I have a couple examples here of CrowdStrike and SentinelOne. These again, great companies that are out there like CrowdStrike, their goal is to stop the breaches. They're cloud native like we are, and they're really working on getting out there and taking care of what's going on in your environment. But there is a second step to that, right? The security team is always not the team that's actually going to be making changes and actually remediating things on the endpoints. That usually falls to IT ops. And yeah, they're kind of stuck with multiple tools, legacy tools, if you're talking about different operating systems like Windows and Mac, they might have two different tools for that. That's kind of painful. And then they might have multiple tools, one for deploying software, another one for doing configurations, and on and on. And these legacy tools don't work in today's environment, right? If they need to be dependent on VPN, that's going to be a kind of a barrier. And I remember talking with partners and with customers last year in the March, April timeframe when COVID first hit, and they were all too busy. The partners I was talking to, the customers I was talking to, because they were all trying to do more VPN licenses. We didn't know how long this was going to last. There wasn't no time or budget to kind of switch things around. So it was kind of a Band-Aid. But here we are now in 2021, and we're still dealing with this, right? And still trying to deal with people working from home and legacy tools and how the two of them don't work together. So that's kind of why we want to say, hey, how can we bring this together? So that's kind of how Automox and an EDR tool can kind of work together. And we can kind of do this from both sides. On the left-hand side of the slide, we can be proactive, right? We can kind of create a policy that says, hey, as new patches come out for this group of computers, go ahead, download that and apply that automatically, and immediately reduce that target surface so that your EDR tool, your antivirus tool, your other security tools can really focus on the more advanced and the more concerns in that environment. Let's kind of take care of that low-hanging fruit with that. And then as those tools do find something in the environment, then again, who's going to go and actually make those changes? So yeah, now that we got the patches deployed, but what if we have to change a security setting? What if we have moved from one software to another software, yet that old software still has some issues, right? A security concern. Has it been completely removed from all of my employees' computers? How do I do that when they're all working from home? So our tool Automox can do that, right? We can go out there and we can identify and we can verify what's on those computers. And if it shouldn't be on there, we can push out an uninstall package, for example, or make a security change to kind of take care of that. And again, this is kind of almost an endless loop, right? You're always kind of, as new things are going on, you're doing the proactive and the reactive things to stay ahead of the hackers and make sure that your endpoints have that strengthened endpoint security. So let's dive a little bit deeper into a couple of use cases here. And again, let's go back to vulnerabilities. I've been involved with vulnerability patch management since 2002. It is not a very sexy, it's time consuming, it can be difficult to get all these patches out. And that's kind of why you see stats like this, over 3 months before people are taking care of the vulnerabilities. 3 months. Because it is kind of boring and tedious, and there's not a lot of automation out there, and there's a lot of dependencies. So we definitely want to kind of move away from that, especially considering now it takes less than a week for somebody, a bad guy out there, a hacker, to weaponize that and take advantage of that. You don't have 3 months to take care of these things anymore. We gotta go quicker. So with Automox, we have seen and talked to our customers and done analysis, and over 90% of them have put in automatic policies to actually deploy patches in less than a day, to actually kind of get to that situation to avoid kind of that less than 1 week exposure time for the hackers. I do see a question came in, so I want to answer that real quick. Somebody is asking if we have an integration with a help desk ticketing system. And we do have APIs. So really, our technology is going to be queried by other technologies, like by CrowdStrike, by help desking system. So it's really on that side for that technology to make the API call. Just again, the nature of what we do with our product. So again, depends on what that help desk software is and kind of what their open APIs are, and then we can make a connection that way. So let's go on to another example, and let's go into outside of patching and get deeper into what we call worklets. Worklet is just kind of our terminology for pushing out scripts. So on your Mac and Linux computers, we're going to use Bash, and then on Windows, we're going to use PowerShell. And now we can run any script as a system user, and now we can kind of measure those conditions and states and take any action that's out there. When I first heard about this, and I still hear this from customers and partners, like, hey, that sounds great, Peter, but that also sounds like a lot of work. I haven't done PowerShell in a while, or I don't do it too often. I want to do X, Y, and Z. Do you already have this built? So the way that we approach this is opening up and creating an open community so that your peers out there can share what they have done and how to do this. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you can go out there. So we have a process where somebody can create a worklet for different operating systems to do different things. They'll submit it to us at Automox, and we'll vet that, right? We'll verify that it works, we'll verify the security around that and what it does, and then we'll post that over to the community. And now you can go and look at hundreds of worklets today, and you can ask questions, right? You can go back to the people who did those, or just ask questions in general. It's like, hey, this is a great worklet. It does almost what I want, but hey, does anybody dealt with this issue or that issue? And so it's a kind of a two-step process here, right? You got that whole library, and you also have a group of people out there that can help you kind of get to the next step. Another question just came in. Do we integrate with Jamf? So again, that's a tool that we more or less we would place. So you could definitely you don't have an integration with them with Jamf, but we could actually replace that tool if you wanted something for multiple operating systems. All right, so let's continue. So worklets again are great, great way to do things, but they are a little bit independent, right? They you create one, off they run. But what if you want to start doing multiple things? So we can do that, right? We can kind of start adding these things together in what we call a work chain. So this is not fully released yet. We have this kind of in the beta, more or less, or alpha stage right now. So in 2021, we will be releasing this so that now you can start putting things together. You can say, hey, you know what? Let me test how much memory is available on this endpoint before I start applying patches, right? Maybe, a user's working all day. Finally, in the evening, hey, I'm gonna, go ahead and walk away from my computer, but they leave all their applications running. My memory's kind of, touched, and now we got to start, pushing out a patch or a package. Do we have that available? Or do we want to have more things around the reboot, right? More conditions and more controls, not just the notifications or snoozing, but even more capabilities, right? So again, we can kind of create a worklet for that and go a little bit deeper with that. Another example is, we can open up Adobe Reader. Well, why would you want to do that? I mean, I remember a company that I worked for that every year we had to go through a security training class. Not only do we have to go through this and kind of make sure that, hey, this is how you deal with spam email or this issue, but we also had to sign off on this every year. So same thing. Now we got people working from home. Hey, go watch this. And after you watch this, let's go ahead and push out a PDF file and open Adobe Reader for that user so they can read that document, do the signature, and get it back. Another last example we have on here is testing Wi-Fi. And this is another great one that came from one of our customers. They were struggling with some of their users and some applications saying that it's way too slow now that they're working from home. Well, it turns out that a couple employees set up their home office too far away from an access point or from the wireless hub, and their internet was just, their bandwidth should say to that endpoint was really slow. So they created a worklet where they could actually test the Wi-Fi speed on that endpoint at that home user and kind of put parameters in there, and then say, okay, now that we have this certain condition, then we can go out and take care of that. And that's kind of what really leads into that next box on here, and that's that green one called Data Insight. This is the other thing that we can do with Workchain coming later this year, is really takes it to the next level and start asking questions. When I was deploying patches, when I ran this as a service, I did have computers in different groups, right? There was groups that were more critical than other groups. I mean, everybody's important. So how to break that down, and kind of one area that everybody agreed on, who's the most critical person? And that's the person who's doing payroll. We all like to get our paycheck every week, and we all agree that maybe we should not be deploying the very first patch because Microsoft and vendors sometimes have made mistakes. Hey, maybe we should put them into a later group. So with our data insights in a work chain, we can do things like saying, hey, don't deploy to the payroll computer until the first 100 computers have got their patches and they're all successful. So again, just an example of how we can enable and enhance this to really kind of make this more flexible in your environment, but also more importantly, automate this, right? I don't have to sit there and count or see that first group got those patches. Just when it hits 100, then it's going to go ahead and kick off that automatically. So let's take a look at a case study real quick here. Coke Disruptive Technologies, they had these same kind of concerns in 2020, right? They had a lot of legacy tools out there. They're moving away from having, an office. All their employees now are going to be working from home for quite some time going in the future. So they said, hey, we want to go cloud first. Or cloud native kind of security technology. So they kind of settled on CrowdStrike to stop the breaches. And then they brought us in to help with the endpoint management to get that security there. And they really looked at this, right? They didn't want to just pick cloud first or cloud native security technologies, but they also wanted to make sure that they had the automation in there for going forward, but also in the initial steps. I mean, think about it. When you're changing a technology from one tool to another tool, that's quite painful, right? There could be retraining involved, there could be a security gap in there. So as they were decoupling from their legacy network and getting to these cloud kind of solutions, they had to also want to make sure that there was no gap in that process, right? And making sure that was there. And visibility was the key for that, to really understand the different steps and kind of work that all out. And by using CrowdStrike and Automox, they were able to achieve that and actually reduce the overhead their IT department was spending on these kind of things by 80%, right? So really, really addressing the pain and really using the technologies to stop the breaches and now be able to patch and manage their endpoints no matter where their employees are. So again, yeah, what they did is they kind of picked these two technologies together, right? And why did they put these together? It's really where these two circles overlap that I want to focus on here, right? Again, a cloud native solution for both of these pieces that they were looking to do, the automation in there, right? And then really understanding that, in this case here, CrowdStrike is really good at doing certain things and Automox is really good at doing these other things, right? So kind of picking the best in class and making sure that the two products can work together. But also focus on what they do the best. So in summary, before we move into questions and a couple more things from Winslow, just want to again say kind of what Automox does and kind of what we deliver, right? Again, cloud native solution, no servers, nothing else for you to set up, everything securely hosted up on Amazon, so no VPNs, none of those issues. One tool for your different operating systems. So you can now do Windows, Mac, and Linux from one tool. I know that we had some questions on integration. So again, we do have those open APIs so that we can go out and do that, right? And then really it's kind of that middle bar here, right? Our technology is going to allow you to kind of deploy to any machine in the world, patch those operating systems and third party, in addition to also having the ability to change security settings or uninstall software, or really anything you can imagine. And again, to make that life easier, we have that open source network, that community of Worklets, and we have more technologies come out to kind of raise the bar and give you even more capabilities with our technology. All right, so I'm going to hand it back over. We did have one more question here. Great question here. Are we compatible with iOS? So we are not. We are focused on server and desktop operating systems. So an MDM or mobile device management is what you would need for like the iPhone or iPad or something else for Android, especially when it comes to iOS. Apple is very concerned about security. And they have certain MDM tools that you would have to actually use to be able to patch iPhones and iPads. So there's a strict requirement from there, and we're not in that space today. So Courtney, back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter, for joining us. So just to wrap up, what's next? What's the next step from here? So going back to what I mentioned earlier about the assessments we have around cybersecurity, our team offers a no-cost NIST assessment to help you better understand where your security posture is today. Essentially, all we ask is for a 60-minute time investment from our customers. We'll provide you with a Winslow secure score that aligns with all 5 pillars of the NIST framework, along with recommendations to fill any gaps. So our team is actually going to be reaching out to everyone who attended after this. We can discuss the WTG secure score in more depth, schedule that assessment, get an Automox demo scheduled for you guys, set up another call to deep dive further into this as well. So we'll be following up with all of you guys after this. And then I'm going to jump to some questions. I know we have a few that are coming through. It looks like, Peter, I'll give this one to you, but can you remote control a system or endpoint via Automox?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a category of tools out there called RMM, Remote Management and Monitoring, and we're not really in that space. So we don't have a built-in kind of tool to kind of take over a computer for remote control. Now we can, again, have a worklet so we can push out a piece of software that, that gives you that capability. And that way you could move away from an RMM tool and kind of deploy your own. So while we don't have that in kind of as a core capability, again, with our worklets, you could deploy any software so that you could do that.
Awesome. And then one more came through. Is Automox employee or device-based for licensing?
We are device-based, right? So every computer out there. So if you do have a shared computer, it's just one license for that computer, and there could be multiple users on that endpoint.
Awesome. We're getting tons of questions. Are you able to deploy OEM firmware and driver packs, for example, Dell Latitude drivers?
Yeah, so that one gets a little tricky, when you're at the BIOS level and some other things. So that's kind of a little more of a one-off, right? It kind of, and also kind of depends. In some cases, we should be able to do some of those. Other ones, depending on how the vendor kind of set those things up, we might run into a little bit more of a challenge with them. So unfortunately, I can't say 100% yes, but we can definitely, get towards that and help with a lot of cases.
Awesome. And I think there was another one as well. At what point does Automox connect to the endpoints to install the patches?
Yeah, so we are agent-based. So after the agent gets installed, there is going to be a check-in. By default, it's going to be 24 hours, but you can make that happen, multiple times a day if you want. And that's kind of how it checks in from there. And then it's when it checks in, that's what's going to get its schedule, right? Hey, I'm deploying the patches at this certain time. This is my start time. This is the number of patches that I need to install. And then it kind of often runs from there.
Awesome. And then I had one come to me as well. Do you guys have integration with SolarWinds HD?
We do not. So we kind of consider them kind of a competition. So we don't have an integration with them.
Awesome. And I think we actually, our first question we got was more of a fun one. Somebody had actually asked, I think in a joking manner, how old Siri is. I assume this person really likes Patagonia and wants to get that gift card. So I'm here to tell you that per Google, the voice assistant was released as an app for iOS in February of 2010 and acquired by Apple 2 months later. So whoever wanted to know that one, that's what Google says in terms of Siri. And one last one that actually just came through. Are there any CrowdStrike specific worklets?
So I would have to go to the community to take a look. Again, we do work very closely with CrowdStrike. That's another one of my responsibilities, but I don't know off the top of my head if there's actual worklets that are out there for them. I mean, we have an integration with them and plans to enhance that integration. But again, worklets before that integration comes out is a great way to get around that. I just don't know off the top of my head if we have something in the community.
Absolutely. And for any CrowdStrike customers out there or people looking at CrowdStrike, we've actually been bundling Automox with CrowdStrike for quite a while at this point. So what we're seeing is that for CrowdStrike, you would need the Spotlight module. And that Spotlight module is going to essentially spotlight where those patches need to be done. And then that Automox software will go ahead and put those patches through. So if you are a current CrowdStrike customer and you're interested in Automox, get with us so we can double check your licensing with CrowdStrike to make sure you have Spotlight because you'll need that for the Automox licensing. Well, that's it. I know we have a lot keeping us busy these days. I really appreciate you guys spending time with us. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. We'll follow up with all of you guys for any additional questions you have. And I will also be reaching out to the winner of that gift card here shortly. So thank you guys, and I hope you guys have a great day.